Picture someone who clocks in every morning. They show up, they do the work, they follow every rule they were handed. And tonight, that same person has nowhere safe to sleep. This is not about someone who quit. It is not about someone who gave up. It is about people who did everything right. In New York City alone, the count tonight runs past 120,000. Across the country, nearly 40% of newly homeless adults hold full-time jobs. So the question is not who failed. The question is what changed. Nobody got lazy. No city stopped caring overnight. Something underneath all of us had been cracking for years, quietly, year after year, and no one sat you down to explain it. So let me try. Here is the strange part. The city breaking fastest made one promise 4 decades ago. At the time, it made perfect sense. It was generous. It was humane. And now that promise is tearing the place apart. Let me show you how a good idea became a trap. New York stands alone among major American cities. By law, it has to take in anyone who comes asking. No strings. Nobody turned away on a technicality. When that rule was written in 1981, the city sheltered around 20,000 a night. The math worked. The promise was keepable. Then the years stacked up. By 2026, the nightly count pushed past 120,000, 6 times the original load, and the courts still hold the city to the same obligation. The promise never shrank to fit reality. Reality grew until the promise broke. Now the city stares at a bill it was never built to pay. Officials project a 2026 bill between $5 and $8 billion for emergency housing alone. Sit with that for a second. It tops the entire yearly budget of 15 American states combined. Not long ago, this line ran around $1.4 billion a year. In 3 years, it detonated. It climbed somewhere between 300–500%. A fair question lands here. If 120,000 people need housing, how does the cost balloon into billions? People in the comments asked exactly that. The math feels off until you trace where the money goes. The city is not building cheap rooms. It rents whatever exists at whatever price the second it is needed. Courts are watching. There is no room to bargain. Crisis pricing is the most expensive pricing there is. Think of it like a burst pipe. You did not shop around for a plumber at 2 in the morning. You pay whatever stops the flood. The city pays whatever stops the flood every single night. And that money does not appear from nowhere. It gets pulled from everything else. Police overtime got cut by almost $130 million. Public schools swallowed hundreds of millions in reductions. Libraries killed 7-day access, the first such cut in decades. Fire and medical staffing got quietly trimmed. Response time started drifting upward across multiple boroughs. Every dollar spent on the promise is a dollar taken from somewhere people depend on. And analysts warn the path leads somewhere worse. New York could face a shortfall above $10 billion. At that point, the choices turn brutal. Steep tax hikes, a collapse of basic services, or both at once. But here is what disappears inside the numbers. These people are not rows in a spreadsheet. They are children doing homework on a hotel bathroom floor. They are grandparents stretched across a subway bench. They are families who, by any honest measure, were doing it all right. More than 23,000 kids attend New York City public schools. At night, they sleep in shelters or temporary hotel rooms. Many ride for hours each day. Their assigned room sits nowhere near their classroom. They arrive worn out. Often they have not eaten. The night before, there was no quiet corner to finish the work that was due. Teachers describe absenteeism climbing in a pattern that tracks where placements cluster. These kids are not short on effort. They are short on the conditions where effort can do anything. Give a child a desk and a quiet hour. Watch what they pull off. Take those away, and trying alone fills nothing. We tell kids that effort is the lever. Pull it, and your life moves. But a lever needs something solid to push against. These children are pushing against air. One more group barely gets mentioned at all. Seniors now make up close to 20% of New York's shelter population. People over 60, they lived in one apartment for decades. Then rising rents pushed them out. Medical bills stacked up. Retirement savings were never built to chase a housing market moving this fast. The comments kept circling back to them. Many land in places that cannot keep insulin cold. Rooms a wheelchair will not fit inside. Buildings never meant for anyone managing a chronic illness. Picture 40 years in the same home. Paying on time. Never causing trouble. Ending up here. These are people who did exactly what their generation was told to do. Work hard. Stay put. Trust that loyalty to a place gets returned. The rules they followed were the right rules for a world that no longer exists. Nobody warned them the ground would move. And the comments are full of their children watching, unable to stop it. Picture how that lands on someone at 70. You spend a lifetime being the one who provides. Then the floor gives way. And there is no time left to rebuild it. A young person can absorb a lost decade. A retiree cannot. The clock that used to feel like a friend turns into a wall. Homelessness here looks nothing like the old picture. It carries strollers and walkers. It holds first graders and grandparents in the same frame. Let that settle for a moment. Now follow people to where they land once the shelters fill. When the traditional system maxed out, the city tried something new. It began converting private hotels into shelter space. By now, north of 200 of them serve only as housing sites. Properties in Midtown, Times Square, the financial district. Rooms once rented to tourists at $300 to $500 a night. Now they lease long-term. Often the city pays over the going rate. With no fallback and a court breathing down its neck, bargaining is a luxury nobody had. This got sold as temporary. A bridge until permanent construction caught up. Construction never caught up. It will not for years. So rooms meant to hold people for weeks became their address for months. For some families, closing in on a year or more. And these families live in one room. No kitchen. No table. No door to close for a moment alone. None of the basic things a household needs to function. Picture a child studying on the corner of a hotel bed. A parent cooking dinner for 3 on a single microwave. None of this is a passing inconvenience. For thousands of families, this quietly hardened into normal life. Meanwhile, the hotels still open to actual travelers turned pricier because supply tightened. Neighborhoods around the converted buildings started pushing back. An emergency fix grew its own emergencies, and the original crisis kept swelling underneath it. And when the hotels could not hold everyone, people made their own arrangements. On a typical night in New York, an estimated 25,000 people sleep inside the subway, across the seats, down in the tunnels, along the platforms, on the benches, in a network designed to carry people, never to shelter them. Late-night cars filled with bodies stretched across the seats or laid out on the floor. Major stations become unofficial bedrooms after dark. Transit workers now file incident reports in record numbers. They face situations no one ever trained them for. Cleaning crews scrub more than 1,000 cars a day. They handle biohazard waste and medical emergencies found in no transit job description. And riders respond the way you would. They stop coming. After dark, several lines have lost a fifth of their riders. The economy did not shrink. People simply stopped trusting the train once the sun went down. And that lost ridership ripples out. Fewer businesses stay open late. Fewer tourists ride. More middle-class residents quietly decide to leave. More than 500,000 New Yorkers have moved away since 2020. Many pointed to housing costs and safety. Here's why that matters past the obvious. Residents leave. The tax base shrinks. Less money means weaker services. Weaker services push more residents out. The loop turns on its own. One family at a time. Slowly the reasons to stay erode away. No alarm goes off. There's no single moment it snaps. It just thins out. The city did try to clean up the visible edge. More than 2,000 encampment clearances happened in a single 12-month stretch. Police and sanitation crews swept Manhattan and Brooklyn. Tents came down. People got moved off park entrances, storefronts, sidewalk. Then the data came back. The total homeless count grew after the sweeps. It did not shrink. More than 70% of cleared spots were reoccupied within hours. Nobody got housed. They got shuffled. A sidewalk became a train platform. A park bench became a ferry terminal. One borough simply handed them to the next. Civil rights groups sued. They argued the city was punishing survival with no lawful option on offer. Shop owners countered that their blocks could not function without enforcement. Police described being dropped into a contradiction with no tools to fix it. The city was shoving people out of sight while running out of anywhere to put them. This was never something cops could solve. It was arithmetic with no answer, and the health fallout spreads far past the curb. Packed shelters are near perfect ground for tuberculosis. It spreads through close contact in poorly ventilated rooms. Hepatitis A and C rates climb on bad sanitation and shared needles. Respiratory illness tears through shelter buildings in days. Out in the camps, winter brings frostbite. Summer brings heat sickness. Bacteria show up in every season. Each year, over 100,000 medical emergency calls now trace back to someone without a home. That piles onto hospital systems already stretched past their limit. Overdose deaths in New York hit a record above 3,000 a year. Fentanyl drives most of it. And it often happens where help cannot arrive in time. None of this stays sealed inside homeless communities. It moves through every system the city runs on. Every hospital, every emergency room, every public health dollar feels it. If this is helping the picture come into focus, drop a comment below. Tell me what part caught you off guard. Now here's what makes this even harder than most people grasp. New York is not only housing its own, it works as a pressure valve for the entire northeastern United States. Since 2022, the city's intake system has absorbed more than 180,000 newcomers. Many came on buses deliberately routed up from Florida, Texas, and Arizona as a political maneuver. Yet migrants are only one piece. Providers in surrounding states route their own displaced people toward New York. Under the shelter guarantee, the law forces a bed to exist for everyone, somewhere in the system. Word travels through informal networks too. It gets around that the city refuses no one. So the New Yorkers already on the street end up with even less. The line behind them just grew. Let me be precise here because this gets twisted constantly. Migrants did not cause this crisis. The cracks were spreading before anyone arrived. The newcomers landed on a city with nothing left in reserve. Two crises collided. Ahead of the wave, the nightly shelter count sat around 60,000 to 65,000. Afterward, it blew past 120,000. No one calls that a minor uptick. It is one system handed double the load with not a dollar more to carry it. Officials now say out loud what analysts calculated quietly for years. One city budget cannot soak up the entire nation's housing failures. Each time someone finally exits a placement into a real home, another arrives to fill the gap. Turnover drifts towards zero. The pressure never releases. It compounds. Now step all the way back from New York, because none of this belongs to New York alone. It is simply the loudest echo of a shift gripping the whole country. And it is showing up in towns that swore they were safe from it. Spokane, up in Washington. Knoxville, down in Tennessee. Boise, out in Idaho. Then Tulsa. Salt Lake City. Colorado Springs. Everyone has reported double or triple-digit jumps in homelessness since 2019. And here's the cruel twist. People squeezed out of pricey coastal metros fled to these very towns, hunting for breathing room. What they found was the same crisis already waiting. Boise rents climbed 70%. Austin rose 65%. Tampa went up 55%. The ones who relocated to escape could not escape. They packed a truck. They drove 1,000 miles. They unpacked into the same trap, just a different zip code. Whatever drove this was never a local thing. It follows the highways. It crosses state lines. He was waiting in the new town before the moving boxes came off the truck. So what are those forces? The core is simple. The scale is not. From 2020 through 2026, typical American rent jumps 30 to 50%. A handful of cities watched it pass 60 in just a few years. Service worker pay, meanwhile, crept up maybe 4 to 6% each year. After inflation, plenty of them lost ground in what a paycheck could buy. Here is the line that should stop you cold. Here is the benchmark. Spend no more than 30% of your gross income on rent. To clear that bar on the average one-bedroom, you need to earn around $29.71 an hour. Across the country, those same workers average somewhere from $16 to $20 an hour. Nurses, teachers, hospital staff, store managers all fall into the same trap. When 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency, that is not a budgeting flaw. That is a structural fact. A wage and housing system that turned mathematically incompatible with stability for tens of millions. You were not bad with money. The equation got rewritten while you paid your bills. So how did the gap stretch this wide? Part of it is supply. Economists estimate a national shortfall of 4 to 7 million housing units. That hole deepens every year. The roots trace back to the 2008 collapse. Building ground nearly to a halt. Smaller builders went under. Skilled tradespeople left and never came back in the numbers needed. When building restarted, it chased profit. In most places, the profit lived in the pricier units. Apartments renting at $2,200 a month and up. Starter homes and affordable rentals did not pencil out the same way, so builders simply skipped them. The shortage of homes working families could afford kept deepening. Cranes rose over the skylines anyway. But supply is only half the story. And here the picture turns, where the comments handed me a sharper way to see it. Near 2011, big investment outfits pushed into the single-family market, on a scale nobody had witnessed. They scooped up homes by the tens of thousands in one go. These were the markets that once served as on-ramps into the middle class. In certain neighborhoods, institutional buyers swallowed 20 to 30% of what was for sale. Take Atlanta. Corporate hands held almost no single-family houses there, then roughly 18% of them. 1 decade. Here's the part worth slowing down for. A home stopped being a place to live. It became a line on a balance sheet. Once a roof becomes an asset somebody parks money in, it stops cycling back to ordinary buyers. It just stays. It becomes a permanent rental. And this is the quiet hinge the whole crisis turns on. A house used to be shelter first, investment second. Somewhere those two swapped places. Once the spreadsheet comes first, the family comes last. A home meant to hold a life becomes a place to hold money. And money does not move out so the next young couple can move in. It sits there. It collects rent. It does exactly what it was bought to do. So here's the part that stings. Your home was supposed to be the safest investment you could make. That belief is the trap. The moment a roof becomes a wealth-building tool, it has to throw off returns for someone. And returns come out of someone else's rent. The thing sold to you as security is the same thing locking the next family out. Up with the rents. Starter homes quit changing hands. The ownership ladder was how working families built stability and passed it forward. It stopped working for millions at the same moment. Young workers no longer competed against other first-time buyers. Now their rival was a fund waving an all-cash offer. Almost nobody in their 30s wins that fight. Short-stay rental apps deepened the wound in tourist-heavy town. Studies show a tipping point. While even 10 to 15% of a neighborhood's rentals flip to short-term stays. Long-term rents climb by as much as 20%. In some cities, upward of 30% of housing got pulled from the long-term market entirely. One landlord might clear $3,000 a month from weekenders versus $800 from a year-round tenant. Thousands took the deal. And the people who wait on those visitors? servers, hotel cleaners, flight crews. More and more, they could not afford the towns they clocked into. The shelter was sold to people who would never sleep in it twice. Every bit of this stacked on top of the worst inflation in 4 decades. Since 2020, grocery bills have risen 25 to 35%. Average new car payments now run past $735 a month. Out-of-pocket health costs outran paycheck. Nationwide credit card debt blew past $1.3 trillion, a record with no precedent. Average interest now runs between 22 and 29%. Inflation did not just make life pricier. It stripped the buffer that kept people housed. That thin margin between a family and a crisis simply vanished. And once it was gone, one rough month was enough to tip it all over. And the eviction machine grants almost no grace for a single bad month. Meet Marcus. He apprentices as an electrician in Tampa, 31 years old, pulling $22 an hour. A commercial project stalled. 6 weeks with no paycheck followed. A single late rent check and the filing landed. By the time he was back on the job, he had paid every dollar owed. The fees, the court costs, all of it. Too late. The process had already moved forward without him. 7 landlords turned him down. 1 finally took him, and only at a rent marked up 20%. All because of that one record. 6 rough weeks. A decade of damage. 1 stretch of bad luck, and the record follows you like a shadow. The math is cruel. The setback lasts a month. The penalty lasts 10 years. And Marcus is no outlier. Filings nationwide now run 30 to 50% over where they stood before the pandemic. In Houston, Las Vegas, and Phoenix, the jump tops 70%. Many landlords file the moment rent crosses 1 day late. Late fees stack daily. Credit scores tank. And an eviction trails a person from application to application. Sometimes for years, long after the money problem got solved. At the same stroke, the entry bar climbed. Credit scores now start at 650. Income has to hit 3 or 4 times the rent. Deposits run past $4,000 in plenty of markets. So the threshold for plain housing rose right as people's power to meet it collapsed. Seeing this play out where you live? Tap like on the video. It pushes this in front of more people. When people cannot clear those bars, they grab whatever still works. Today, more Americans sleep in their vehicles than at any point this country has on record. The figure reaches 1.5 million, spread across cars, vans, campers, and trailers. More than 600,000 of them hold full-time jobs. And I want to speak straight to those people, because the comments are full of you. The one who showers at a truck stop before a shift, who keeps a small storage unit just to have somewhere to change clothes, who clocks in on time every time, then heads back to a parked car at night. You are not a cautionary tale. You are doing something brutally hard while still holding a job. The system handed you no better door. You did not make a foolish choice. You made the only choice left after every cheaper, safer one got taken off the table. There is a difference. Hold on to it. In many cities, extended stay motels run at 90 to 95% occupancy. Not with travelers, with working families who lost stable housing. At first it seems doable. No lease to sign. No deposit. Nobody checking credit. But a motel at $80 a night runs past $2,400 over a month. That beats the price of a plain apartment nearby. Nobody picks this because it works out better. They pick it because the other door closed in their face. The shape of work itself makes climbing out tougher than it appears. By 2026, contract and gig labor covers over 36% of the American workforce. Warehouse temps, rideshare drivers, the person delivering your dinner. Employed on paper, sure, but no hours are promised. No health plan from a boss. No leave that pays. No cushion when the work dries up. A driver pulling $18 an hour on the listing might actually pocket $11, maybe $12. Trip out fuel, insurance, the car itself, and the self-employment tax. The money arrives unpredictably scattered across apps. Budgeting toward a fixed rent turns into guesswork. One slow week does more than open a gap. It can set off a cascade that finishes at an eviction notice. Risk got pushed down the ladder, onto the worker. Companies keep the labor and drop the commitment. Every dip in demand lands on the person doing the work. A full-time job just does not anchor a life the way it used to. And for millions, student loan payments swallowed whatever cushion remained. For borrowers aged 25 to 40, the typical balance keeps climbing. It runs from $32,000 up to $48,000. When repayment restarted after the pandemic pauses, millions lost $200 to $500 a month. From budgets already stretched thin. None of it came out of savings. Savings, for most, do not exist. It came out of where they lived, what they ate. The silent compromises people stack up while juggling everything at once, and with less room each month to manage it. For one borrower in three, the payments forced to move to cheaper, shakier housing, crammed in with relatives, parked in a camper, or moved far from work just to afford a roof. Across the United States, the average first-time buyer has now aged to 36. That is the highest figure ever logged. During the 1980s, that same buyer was 29. A 7-year slide, and not because anyone got picky about lifestyle. It is what debt-to-income ratios do. They knock people out of the mortgages they would need to bid against cash investors. College was sold as the path to a stable life. Its cost became one of the forces keeping millions renting forever, often inside the very towns where they earned the diploma meant to lift them. Through all of this, one question keeps sitting in the background. Is there no safety net here? There is one. On paper, anyway. The voucher program was meant to open the private rental market to lower and middle-income families. But for decades, demand has buried it. Just one eligible family in 4 ever lands a voucher. Plenty of cities post wait times of 5 to 10 years. Some lists are closed entirely. Families apply, get added, then wait years before anyone calls. Even among those who do get a voucher, 40 to 60% expire unused. Landlords decline to take them. Federal caps on a voucher tend to sit roughly $400 under the real market rent. Even helped families come up short month after month with nothing to close the gap. On paper, the net is there. At the size this crisis needs, it simply is not. A safety net with holes this wide is not a net. It is a decoration. It lets everyone point to it and say help is there, while people fall straight through the gaps. And the tools that actually worked at scale have vanished. Through the pandemic, eviction bans held millions in their homes. Rental aid plugged the holes. Boosted unemployment stood in for lost wages. Once those supports lapsed, the landlords who had been restrained jacked rents up quickly to recover the lost time. Benefits reset to their pre-pandemic size, which no longer matches what anything costs. Food aid shrank just as grocery prices climbed to highs not seen in generations. Here's what counts most in that whole chain of events. The pandemic did not create this crisis. It only revealed it. Long before 2020, millions of working people sat one missed check from losing their roof. The relief bought time. Roughly 2 years of it. When it ended, the fragility that had quietly grown for years surfaced all at once. Come 2026, no federal response of that size stands anymore. The cost of living sits 30 to 70% above pre-pandemic levels. Never has the distance between a paycheck and a stable roof stretched this far. And the systems meant to catch a falling person have not come close to matching the numbers. Right now, close to 40% of the country's newly homeless adults clock full-time hours. Shelters in cities that never kept a waiting list now keep one. Communities that thought they were nothing like New York or San Francisco are learning otherwise. Not because their situations are identical, because the forces underneath are the same. And here I want to talk straight to anyone thinking the move out is the answer. To anyone planning to pack up and chase somewhere cheaper. Read the map first. People who left San Francisco and Los Angeles once belonged to those cities. Now they call themselves refugees from their own hometowns. They ran. The storm reached the new place before they did. Because the thing chasing you is never local. You would be running with the wind, not against it. I know some of you are eyeing a cheaper town right now and doing the math. Hold on before you sign anything. The rent looks lower today, but the same forces are already pointed at that place. You would arrive just in time to watch the prices chase you. Some towns, yes, still build fast enough that you would not feel it yet. But the question is not whether your town is already broken. The question is whether your town knows what New York knows. And if the path holds, the picture gets harder. On the present trajectory, the city's homeless count keeps climbing. It could land between 150,000 and 200,000 inside a few years. Yearly emergency outlays could top $12 billion. That forces cuts to transit, schools, infrastructure, and police. Cuts that reshape what the city can even offer the people who stay. Residents leave. The tax base shrinks. Services decline. More people leave. The loop runs on its own momentum. Quietly. There's no single visible moment of failure. It just turns until whatever once made the place worth living in has faded out, and home ownership is slipping out of reach. For decades, it was how working families built stability and handed something forward. Now it is leaving a growing share of the workforce behind. Nationally, the median home now runs past $420,000. Since 2021, mortgage rates have close to doubled. A typical down payment demands more than $80,000. Yet most Americans sit on under $5,000 saved. Once that door shuts, the damage does not stay in the housing market. It bleeds into everything else. Couples put off kids. Wealth quits, compounding. Retirement gets shakier. The climb upward stalls. In towns built on the promise that steady work pays off, find the deal quietly rewritten. And nobody made an announcement. So let me say plainly what this is and what it is not. This is not a system that drifted off the rails by accident. It is the sum of decades of compounding choices. Where to allow building. How to treat housing as an investment. What a wage should reasonably cover. How to classify a worker. What protections a renter gets to keep. Each choice looked manageable on its own. Stacked together, they built the conditions every one of us lives inside now. New York rings loudest. But run the figures through Tulsa, through Tampa, through Boise, through any mid-size American town. The same squeeze turns up. The same holes. The same folks who did precisely as instructed. Holding the job. Covering the bills. Obeying every rule. And hitting the end of the road regardless. You were never the problem. The problem got built around you, one quiet decision at a time. Nobody held a vote on it. Nobody asked if you agreed. It accumulated choice by choice in rooms you were never invited into. And it landed on your kitchen table anyway. That is the part worth getting angry about, not at yourself. At the machine that ran the numbers and decided your time was worth less than the rent. So the real question is not whether this is unfolding. It is whether your town already grasps what New York has learned. Drop the name of your city below. I'm curious how wide this is actually reached.